A couple of months ago, somebody commented on my videos that I should try tree fern fiber. That was the very first time that I've ever heard of the thing. I didn't even know what they were on about. They suggested that I look at another YouTuber's videos where they transferred a lot of their rarer anthuriums into tree fern fiber. And that was the first time I delved into this world of this substrate. I had no idea what it was before. And I started looking into it and I thought, this thing looks quite cool. I want to give that a go. So I took the plunge and I decided to purchase some of this. And I've transferred only a handful of plants into this substrate. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving you my verdict on this thing, this tree fern fiber. What is up, guys? My name is Lithius and welcome to Roots Ready. Tree fern fiber is exactly as it sounds. It is made up of the fibrous stem of tree fern, and this one in particular is made up of a New Zealand specific species. This brand is Fernwood, and on their packaging they're really proud to talk about how sustainable they are in terms of collecting this product. They say, we harvest this product under strict New Zealand government regulations designed to ensure the sustainability of the Kurapaka, which is the species of tree fern that they use, for generations to come. Fernwood substrate is unique compared to other substrates in that it has the ability to hold on to moisture without becoming waterlogged. It is slow to compost. Its smell and texture encourages natural burrowing behavior, and it is an excellent growing medium for live plants. So you can see this can be used in vivariums with animals and as well as your plant. I mean, that all sounds really, really good, right? That's exactly what you need. You want your plants to be able to have access to moisture, but not becoming bogged down. And in that kind of environment, you encourage a lot of mold and bacteria and stuff to build up, and that causes a lot of root rot as well. So on the packaging, it sounded very, very good. When it comes to purchasing this thing, it's not readily available. I don't think you can just easily pop into a shop and pick it up. It is kind of one of those things that once it's in stock, and once it's gone, you've kind of got to wait until it comes back. I believe tree fern is one of those harder kind of materials to have. There's a lot of regulation around its collection and how it's used. So I think that contributes to it being a bit harder to get. That also means that it is a lot more expensive. This small bag of 10 liters, I think, set me back almost £40. So it's no way cheap. So if you're gonna get this, just be aware that it's quite pricey and you want to be careful how you're using it. So for me, I'm only gonna use this on plants that I really prize and plants that I really want to do well. And that's exactly what I've done. You can see I haven't used much of it. In fact, I've probably only used about maybe a litre or so of this so far, probably less. I do put a lot of other material in this as well. I added a lot of semi-hydro mix when I do this as well as moss as well. So sphagnum moss, just because I don't want to go through this bag very, very quickly. The very first plant that I transferred into tree fern fiber was this one. This is my Anthurium forgetii. The Anthurium forgetii isn't an especially rare plant. I have so many of them. I have another forgetii. I've got loads of them in my collection just because I've got a mother plant that produces a lot of seeds, so it's quite a good bearer. But the reason why I have decided to put this one in tree fern fiber is because it came out with this wonderful, wonderful mutation where the leaves are super, super belate, very bumpy, incredibly lovely to look at. I can't quite remember what substrate that I had it in, but I did do another video and I'm going to show it in a second about what this plant looked like. But one of the things I was really concerned about was the fact that this plant was browning really, really badly. So all of the leaves were showing signs of distress in the substrate that it was in. So I was quite concerned about that, and I wanted this plant to look amazing and I wanted to encourage that growth. So I took it out of my grow tent, which has a much higher humidity level, and I put it here right under this grow light. So it's a lot further from the grow light than it was in my grow tent, and the humidity levels here are a lot lower. This Anthurium forgetii is way overdue a repot. Look at the roots on this thing. It's bursting out of the pot and screaming out for new substrate. The mix I'll be using is tree fern fiber, sphagnum moss, a bit of well-draining soil, and some semi-hydro mix. We want to give that a really good mix just to make sure all of the substrate is incorporated, that we have a nice lovely blend. Just before we do the repot, I noticed that we have an inflorescence coming out here. I'm going to chop that off because I want the plant to focus on throwing out new leaves rather than focusing its energy on producing inflorescence. What we want to do is just be very careful and remove the plant by giving the pot a little bit of a squeeze. See how easily that comes out? That shows you how well rooted the plant is. We'll be repotting the plant into this larger pot, a lot wider than it is deep. I'm going to remove some of the top soil or the moss that this plant has been growing in. So loosen up as many of the roots as possible. So time to repot. We want to add in a layer of fresh soil like so. I have mixed in the old soil as well. Build up a little mound. Ensure that the roots have contact with that, and then we backfill. And there we have it. The Anthurium forgetii is all nice and potted up. So as you can see, the process of transferring your plants from one type of substrate into tree fern fiber isn't very hard to do. It pretty much is the same process as you would with any other plant. For me, I was quite surprised. This was the first time I was playing around with this substrate. I found it to be quite fibrous, quite twiggy. There were a lot of sort of twigs in there. Look, here's a piece of it. And a lot of the substrate is kind of made up of material a lot like this, and it comes in different sizes. You have to break it up in your hand as well. So it does require a little bit more hands-on approach, because with other soil, you just, it's soil, right? It breaks apart. But with this one, you have to sort of get in and break the clumps apart so that it can be its best for your plants. It gives you a chance to sort of get to know the material a lot better. Since that video, I've gone ahead and I've transferred 3 other plants into the substrate. So this is my Monstera Bowmark Flame, and you can see that it is in quite a bit of tree fern fiber. The Bowmark Flame probably has a lot more tree fern fiber in it than the forgetii, but not by much. I just think I used a lot less sphagnum moss in this one. This is my Monstera Thai Constellation. This bit here where I've made an extension with an old water bottle, this substrate is a lot more similar to the forgetii in that it has a lot of sphagnum moss and tree fern fiber and semi-hydro mix in there. So that's looking really quite good. And the final one is my Philodendron Spiritus Sancti. And to be fair, I've only recently transferred this last week, so I don't think there's gonna be much to talk about. So in terms of the update, what impact has tree fern fiber had on my plants? So let's first talk about the forgetii. I can say hands down that this thing has been really, really positive for this plant in particular, for a couple of reasons. The first reason being that the browning on the edge of my leaves, like you can see here, has completely halted, stopped. This thing was actually becoming a concern because it was actually spreading and spreading when I had it in my other substrate and in my grow tent. But since I've put it in here, it has completely stopped. And all of the new leaves that have come out, like this one over here, this one, I can't quite remember if this is a new leaf as well, but they look immaculate. Not a single brown spot, no yellowing, nothing at all. The plants look really, really good. Looking at the bottom of the pot as well, and if you remember, this was in a very small pot, right? And I've extended it. This thing has already started to push roots out of the bottom, and these roots look super, super healthy. Look at how thick this root is, super, super robust. So for this plant in particular, it has been an absolute success. The plant seems to really, really like it. And what I like is that it's hasn't necessarily made the plant grow a lot faster. What it has done is made for a very strong, robust plant. So high ratings, 10 out of 10 when it comes to this plant over here, my Anthurium forgetii. In the case of the Thai Constellation, again, really, really positive. Since I've transferred it, we have a new leaf that's come in. The leaf is a bit shorter, the petiole is a bit shorter, but I think that's mostly to do with the fact that when I changed this over, I moved the plant from right in front of an east-facing window, a bit further back and under a grow light. So I think the plant is just taking a bit of time to acclimate. Probably the brighter light means that the plant doesn't have to stretch out for light as much as it would before, so that's probably why it's growing a bit smaller, but I don't know, we'll keep an eye on that anyway. But let's come down to the substrate. That's what we're here for. This is the old substrate, still has some good rootage in it, but this one over here, again, you can see that the plant has been able to root quite quickly, quite nicely. Right here in my fingers this is the end of a new root that has developed. We have a nice long juicy root that runs down here, and it actually grew into the substrate below. If I take you across here, some more roots, we have more roots over here. This thing is absolutely scattered in roots. So again, really good news on this one. And another thing I really like about this substrate as well is that it's very airy, very airy. So much so, like this forgetii over here, if it had regular soil in it, it would be very heavy. I would strain to hold this up. But the tree fern fiber is so light. This plant, it's just really light and fluffy. You can tell that there's a lot of airflow going to the roots of this plant, which is probably why that root at the bottom is looking so good and so healthy. So for this plant, where I've battled root rot in the past, this made for a really good option for this extension, because obviously I'm going to be covering a lot of the stem in a substrate. What I don't want to do is have a material or a substrate that's really dense and that can hold onto a lot of moisture and encourage a lot of bacteria that causes root rot, and that can get directly into the stem, and that would just make me restart this whole plant again. This thing is super airy, which is very good. So I don't have to worry too much about this thing developing any type of root rot. So I'm really happy with this, and it seems to be growing well, and I think the plant is also very happy with it as well, with just the way that it's producing new roots all of the time. I don't have much to report on for the Spiritus Sancti because, as I said, I've only done this last week, or it might have even been this week, but I'll keep an eye on this one and let you know how we get on, because we do have a new leaf coming in over here. So we'll see if the next leaf is going to look quite impressive, because obviously the Spiritus Sancti was only rooted down in a pot. So the fact that I'm able to encourage more roots up here might make for a more vigorous growing plant. So we'll see about that. And I'll come back with another video in the near future to give you an update on this and see if this sort of setup is beneficial for my Spiritus Sancti. But by far the most impressive growth is on this plant. It is a small plant, but damn, the growth has been quite impressive. Now, in my previous video, I spoke about this Monstera Bowmark Flame, and that it is one of the newest plants in my collection. And for the longest time, this plant, I've had it for a couple of months now, maybe 3-4 months, maybe, you know, half a year, something, I can't quite remember. But this plant hasn't done much, and I had it in my grow tent. Again, should be perfect temperature, perfect lighting, perfect humidity levels for this plant to start to thrive. And I had it in there for a long time and it just wouldn't do anything. I replaced it into tree fern fiber. This one, as I said, has a lot more tree fern fiber in it than the other makeup here. And I stuck it here right underneath this grow light here where my Spiritus Sancti is. I was away from my plants for about a week, came back to this, a brand new leaf, and it's not like the leaf has only just come out. This leaf is come out and it's growing. Like it's so impressive. So I think for this one, this is the biggest sign of success. The fact that this thing, after just a short time in tree fern fiber, has absolutely exploded in growth. I say exploded, it's grown one leaf, but it's more than it's done in a long time. Since I've had this plant, it hasn't really done much. And in that time, it's absolutely just taken off, and in a very short space of time, I might add as well. So it's good to see that the plant is responding well to this substrate. So what's my verdict? Is tree fern fiber worth it? As I said, it is an expensive substrate. It's very pricey, and it's not only the fact that you have to pay for the tree fern fiber, but you also have to consider that you need to add in other bits and pieces. So for me, I add in semi-hydro mix, so that comes at a cost as well. That's not a very cheap substrate. You know, you can add in other things. I would say that maybe sand probably won't work as well because it's so fibrous. I think the sand will probably just settle to the bottom, so you have to use something else. I would recommend definitely using some sphagnum moss and some other like perlite or something like that, and I think you'll be off to a great start. But obviously that adds to the cost as well. So yes, it is a very expensive product to get into, but the results speak for themselves. It is a very good product. I can see why people are gravitating towards it. So if you're like me, you have a couple of plants that you prize and you really want to encourage their growth and give it the best sort of environment to grow in, I would recommend it definitely, hands down, for those plants, or even those plants that you really struggle to root. And you know, if you have concerns about, for example, my Monstera type constellation, which I'm quite concerned about it developing root rot again, that's a plant that I would definitely recommend putting into tree fern fiber, because that can minimize the possibility of root rot, because it doesn't provide the environment that the root rot causing bugs and bacteria and stuff really like to thrive in. So for those situations, I'll definitely recommend it. If you want to use it for all of your plants, I would say maybe not, but that's just my opinion, and it's up to you what you want to do with that information. But for me and for my prize collection, I think tree fern fiber probably is going to feature a lot more with those plants. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep planting.